On the phone with us now, Bob Caporale, Creative Strategy Generation. Good morning, Bob. How are you this morning?
Morning, Vic. Doing great. Great. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Where are we finding you this morning?
I am in New York City, in my home office here, or my home base here. So,
how is the weather there in the Big Apple?
It got pretty hot over the last couple of days. I was surprised. I was just starting to put on my jacket, and all of a sudden it turned into summer again.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Creative Strategy Generation. Can you kind of explain what all that's about?
Yeah, you bet. So I have a new book out called Creative Strategy Generation. And essentially what I've tried to do is capture the process for putting together a business strategy, but not by imitating the way other people have done it, but rather by tapping into your own creativity and using a creative process to make that happen.
All right, and I was watching one of your YouTube videos, and you posed the question of, can you teach people to be creative? And my initial reaction, and I said it out loud, was, no, you can't. I'm thinking you're going to disagree with me.
Well, you know what? I actually say a similar thing to your answer, is that it's difficult to teach people how to be creative, but what I do believe you can do is teach people how to tap into the creativity that everybody has. And that's really what I try and do in the book. Because the basis of creativity is having great new ideas. And if you ask just about anybody if they've ever had a great new idea, most people will say yes. It's really just a matter of getting that idea out of their head and enabling them to connect it to other people.
All right. And you're also a musician, correct?
I am. Yep, I am.
Yeah. So which side of the brain do you think more with? Is it all the creative side or the analytical side?
I think it's a pretty good, healthy balance of both. But I think that's another thing people don't always realize is, being a musician, people assume, well, you're creative, so all these ideas just kind of hit you like a lightning bolt from the head. But in fact, There's a very strong analytical side of being a musician, right? You have to learn music theory and learn the instrument. There's years and years of practice that goes into it before you could start writing songs and composing music. And so all of that sometimes gets ignored or overlooked, but it's a foundation of what creativity is based on.
In the creative process, what do you think the biggest stumbling block is for people?
I really think it's in, people categorizing themselves as creative or non-creative. So people tend to put themselves into one of those categories or another. And if you consider yourself non-creative, you think that, well, I don't have the ability to do creative things like get these new ideas out into the open and connect them with people. But I think that most people do. And by limiting your thought process like that, it'll prevent you from doing things that I think you're very capable of doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I consider myself to be a creative person, but there are other areas of creativity where I am limited because I think my brain thinks in certain ways and not in others. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I think, when we think about creativity, there's so many facets of it that, I feel I'm a creative person in music and maybe art, but I'm definitely not creative in other areas for sure, like, acting or dramatic arts. So certainly, you have to find your outlet for your creativity and then really play on that.
All right. Using passion and creativity to compose business strategies that inspire action and growth. Sometimes my criticism, or a lot of the time my criticism of the business community, is that there isn't enough creativity. There might be the passion, but when it comes to creativity, it seems like business strategies land in the same area of same old, always doing it the same way over and over again.
It's absolutely true, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way we teach strategy in school. By and large, we teach strategy based on the way other companies have done it. We put a framework together based on the way somebody else has accomplished it, and we don't consider all the unique inputs and all the unique circumstances that probably surrounded those strategies when those companies created them. And so I think by doing that and then going into the business environment and, again, encouraging people to be more imitative, we disallow them to come up with unique ideas and really go outside of the box, to be a little cliche. And I think that's one of the dangers that people suffer from in business.
Bob Caporale on the phone with us, Creative Strategy Generation. Who is a good example of what you're talking about in the book currently, or at least in the last 20 years that you look to in the business environment?
I get asked that question a lot, and I have to be honest, I hesitate to throw any one company's name out there because, the obvious one everybody will think about is Apple and Google and, Amazon, anybody who's really had breakthrough ideas, and I think all of those are valid. But I think, honestly, there's so many startup companies and even large companies who are coming up with unique new ways of doing things that I don't want to just throw one out there. It's really anybody who comes up with a brand new idea and really connects it to the audience. And that connection is really what I think makes it creative.
When did the book come out?
Came out just about a month ago, beginning of August.
What's been the reaction? I'm always interested in what people have to say about books to the author. What have you been hearing?
It's a really interesting question. It's been great. The reaction has been wonderful, and I think what I wrote here is kind of not the traditional business book. It's got a lot of personal stories in it, a lot of fun. It's really trying to be lighthearted, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. They like the fact that I'm combining music and art into this business subject that really nobody else does that, and it allows them to have some fun with this, which I think is a great reaction.
Bob Caporale, thank you very much for being on the show with us. Where can we find out more about you and the book?
So I have a couple of websites set up. The easiest one to remember is composingstrategy.com. It kind of links that music and strategic piece. And from there you can find links to buy the book, links to my personal website, and some of the music that I wrote as well.
Creative strategy generation, using passion and creativity to compose business strategies that inspire action and growth. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Vic. It was a pleasure.